My cheating wife's betrayal led to my ultimate revenge and a lesson she'll regret forever. I'm Michael Barron, and my wife is Sophia Dawes Barron. I work as the executive editor at the Chicago American Globe, and she's the senior vice president at Gravely Publishing. We have 2 children, Michael Jr., who's 23, and Ashley Sophia, who's 21. Junior is wrapping up his international diplomacy studies at Princeton, and Ashley is studying at UC Berkeley. I sometimes tease that she's studying underwater basket weaving. She'd go off on me for saying that. They're both doing really well in their studies. We both bring in good money, though she makes a bit more than me. We were pretty happy, or at least I thought so. We were really looking forward to a great weekend together. Sophia had a tough week and had been excited about this gala for a while. She had this stunning new dress, black, backless, strapless, cut a couple of inches above the knees, with a slight slit up the left side. She had on the diamond necklace I gifted her for our 25th wedding anniversary, along with her favorite sapphire earrings and a replica of Princess Diana's ring. Her blonde hair was styled in an elegant updo, and she looked absolutely stunning. I was dressed in my Brooks Brothers tuxedo. Not much more needs to be said about that. She stood about 12 feet away, leaning against a fake fireplace, sipping champagne from a flute, laughing and chatting like a young college student. I didn't mind that part. It was the slimy-looking guy talking to her, touching her arm and shoulder, whispering in her ear with a smug grin, that bothered me. He had just said something to her, and she was nodding in agreement. Okay, enough is enough, I thought. Time to rescue her from this creep. I was about to intervene when a soft hand grabbed my arm. Don't do anything. My wife is falling for him, and his buddies are keeping an eye on you. I looked down to see a striking brunette beside me. She pointed out a tough-looking guy about 15 feet away, who seemed to be focused solely on me. Then she gestured towards the balcony doors, where another man was standing, watching the crowd. He's planning to take her out onto the balcony and make a move on her. He'll likely try to touch her inappropriately, that's his MO. If your wife doesn't give in, he'll move on to someone else, but he rarely strikes out. No offense. I observed my wife, still smiling, walking with Mr. Slime toward the balcony and out the doors. The 2 henchmen shut the doors behind them and assumed their positions. Turning to the woman beside me, who seemed melancholy as she took a sip of her whiskey sour, I inquired, "Who are you and how do you know all of this?" "That was me 7 years ago," she revealed. I was taken aback. Lana guided me to position my back against the balcony doors, then proceeded to share her story. I was here with my husband, supporting the children's charity event, and we were enjoying ourselves. We were planning to make a significant donation. He started talking to me. Before I knew it, he was touching my back and suggesting we go outside. I was drawn in by his charm and followed him out to the balcony. Once outside, he groped my chest and asked if I liked it. I was shocked but intrigued. He teased me just enough to make me gasp, then slipped his hand under my dress and into my underwear. He inserted 2 fingers, and I peeked instantly. Then he made his proposition. He wanted to take me home for the weekend. We would have passionate closeness, and then I would return home. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, never to be repeated. I went back to my husband and told him I was leaving for the weekend with the man. He stood behind me and watched as I left with him. That's what happened. My husband was crushed. He worked as an accountant. When I returned from the weekend, he couldn't even look at me. I tried to reassure him that it wasn't something we couldn't overcome, but he couldn't have closeness anymore. We grew apart. I started seeking casual encounters at night. He became more withdrawn. His job performance suffered, and he eventually lost his job. One night, I came home and discovered him in the basement. After that, she explained how she spent 7 months in a psychiatric therapy ward. Her 3 kids, aged between 14 and 10, stopped talking to her. Someone must have told them what happened. Her parents took legal action to gain custody. Once they were old enough, her kids filed for emancipation and cut ties with her. Glancing at her watch, she remarked, "It took about 15 minutes to turn me. He's been out there for about 12. Then she instructed me, "Don't turn around, don't acknowledge them, ignore them. If she tries to talk to you, don't look at her. She might claim she has something important to say. If she does, respond as you see fit, and we'll leave together. It'll really upset him, and it might make her reconsider. It could be the only satisfaction you get, at least for now. We'll go somewhere to unwind and talk. Can you handle that? Keep an eye out." I heard her footsteps as she approached from behind. Placing her hand on my upper left arm, she began, "Michael, there's something I need to tell you." I shrugged her off and snapped at her over my shoulder, "Stay away from me. You're nothing but trouble. Say what you need to, but if you don't come home tonight, don't bother coming back at all. We're done, and I'll make sure you regret it. You have more to lose than I do." "Miss Lana," I gestured, and we left. "Michael, we need to talk right now." The atmosphere had calmed down, and people stepped aside to let us through. We headed to the exit. "How did you get here?" I inquired. "Car service," she replied. "Allow me, ma'am," I offered. They brought my Lincoln to the front and opened the door. She got in, and I tipped the young man on the driver's side, got in, and drove off. "I know a quiet place where we can talk if you're okay with that." "Great idea, Michael. I could use a drink." We drove to the Corral, a relatively quiet spot catering to an older crowd. After parking, we entered, found a table in the back, and ordered drinks and appetizers. She shared what was left of her story, and I filled her in on Sophia and me. She was a college professor and had faced a setback in her career when the news broke. I mentioned I was the executive editor at the Chicago American Globe, with 6 years in the Air Force specializing in special operations, and nearly 20 years as a reporter and journalist. I detailed my background. We had 2 kids, Michael Jr. and Ashley Sophia, both away at college. "So, what are you planning to do?" she asked. "I can't even figure out what I'm feeling, let alone what actions to take. If she's not home when I get there, it's time for drastic measures. She'll pay. And he'll pay, too. Oh, gee God." Tears started to stream down my face. She grasped my hand, looking at me as if the world was ending for both of us. I examined her face and realized I could get lucky if I wanted to, but I couldn't. If there was any hope of reconciliation, I couldn't. "Listen, I'm sorry, but rebound closeness isn't my style. I need to go home and handle this. Please give me your number and contact details so we can keep in touch and maybe discuss things. Also, I need that jerk's name so I can start his downfall." She took my phone and entered her full name, Lana Tooley, along with her phone number and address. "Michael, you're a good man. You've been wronged. I hope for more, but I understand your decision. Go home and try to sort this out. Best of luck." I settled the bill and we left. I dropped her off at her townhouse and she went inside. I drove home and entered the house. Sophia wasn't there. Okay, she's made her decision. It was 12:39 a.m. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed my best friend, Steve Dawson. He was also my attorney. We had served together in the Air Force and often joked about how he became a lawyer while I landed a respectable job. A tired voice answered. "Hello, Michael. What's up?" "Mike, it's almost 1 in the morning. Is everything all right?" "No, Steve, it's not. I need you here at 10 a.m. tomorrow, ready to go into lawyer mode and maybe even best friend mode. I'm filing for divorce." Now I had his full attention. I could hear his wife in the background. "It's Mike. We have a problem. You went to that event, right? Sophia met Darren Watson, didn't she? Oh man, you didn't know. Just make sure you're here, Steve. Please, for me." "No problem, I'll be there." I started making a list of things to do. I searched for a bonded locksmith and jotted down his number. Then, I went online and found a website that buys cars for cash with clear titles. I had bought her a BMW for our 24th anniversary. It was registered in my name. I made a note of their contact details and packed 2 small overnight bags with underwear, clothes, and shoes. I left them by the front door and went to bed. I woke up at 7 a.m., made some coffee, and turned on my computer to check the newsroom. I saw that Joe Spain, an investigative reporter, was working. I called Joe and asked him to dig up everything he could find on a guy named Darren Watson. I stressed that this was confidential. "No problem, boss. I'll get right on it." Still no sign of my soon-to-be ex-wife. It was nearly 10, and I was feeling more and more down. I called the car buyer and told him about the BMW I was selling with a clear title and valid Illinois registration. He asked for the model and make and quoted a price. "A 2-year-old BMW, huh? How about $2,000, he said, sounding surprised. "Or is it stolen?" "Nope, but you'll have to pick it up." "Where are you located?" I gave him my address and he said he'd be there in 25 minutes. "Don't sell it to anyone else." "Wait for me," Andy said before hanging up. About 10 minutes later, just as I finished the call with the locksmith, my friend Steve arrived with his paralegal, Doy. We went inside, and I treated them to coffee and English muffins. About 20 minutes later, Andy showed up. I showed him the car registration and title. He wanted to know if there was anything wrong with it. I told him, "It's in good shape. I just don't need it anymore because of the divorce." "Well, I'm glad you're not divorcing me," he joked. They brought a flatbed tow truck, and I signed all the paperwork. Andy paid me and took the car. I shook his hand, and he wished me luck. Still no sign of my cheating wife. I went inside and found my lawyers working hard in the dining room. The divorce papers were ready, and they had prepared a restraining order. They were also working on the lawsuit for alienation of affection. Steve asked about the car, and I told him I sold it because I didn't need it anymore. "You didn't do anything illegal. It's a bit sneaky, but hey, it's impressive." "Let's handle the financial stuff online," I said. For the next 45 minutes, we dealt with banks, investment firms, insurance companies, cell phones, mortgages, and my pensions. By noon, my wife still hadn't returned, and the locksmith had changed all the locks and added keyless deadbolts on all the doors. I treated them to lunch at Saltgrass Steakhouse, where we met Steve's wife, Deanne, known as Dee. She hugged me tightly, showing her support. At the table, Dee looked at me, waiting for me to speak. Finally, I said what she wanted to know, what happened, and what I planned to do next. I didn't do anything except trust my wife. She blindsided me, and I'm still trying to process it. Is there any way to fix this? Hell no. She's still not back, and honestly, the only way out might be if she ends up dead. Dee looked at me sympathetically and nodded, saying she understood. She couldn't fathom why Sophia did it. After talking for a while, we headed home. I got back around 6 p.m., still alone, no sign of my wife. I grabbed a bud and dozed off in my recliner. I woke up at 7 a.m. and shuffled to the shower, feeling tired and sore. After cleaning up, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. Being at church helped a bit. I sat quietly in the back, praying for guidance, but it felt like my prayers were hitting a wall. After Mass, I stayed a while longer, hoping for some sign, but it seemed like I was on my own. That's how it had to be. I drove home, grabbed a coffee at a fast food joint, and parked my Lincoln in the garage next to my 980 full-size Bronco. With the weather changing, I'd soon be using it every day. After locking up the garage, I turned on the TV and watched the Bears-Lions football game. But, as usual, the Bears lost. That seemed to sum up my luck lately. At 5:30, I got a text from my wife. On my way home in 20 minutes. The restraining order was kicking in soon, so things were about to hit the fan. 20 minutes later, I heard a strange car in the driveway. Peeking out the window, I saw some fancy European car, and Sophia stepped out from the passenger side. She leaned in for a kiss with someone, probably Darren Watson. After he left, she came up to the house, but her keys didn't work with the new locks. Confused, she spotted the two small overnight bags by the door. "What's going on?" she muttered. She rang the bell repeatedly and shouted for me to open the door. Frustrated, she yelled, "Open the door, Michael!" I finally went to the door and faced my furious wife. She glared at me and demanded to know what was happening. "Simple, Sophia. Your keys don't work because you don't live here anymore. The woman I used to be married to lived here, but she's gone now." Her eyes widened, and she leaned in for a kiss. "But honey, don't even try it. I don't know where that mouth has been or whose it's been on. How many times did you sleep with him or give him head or do other things? We didn't just have closeness, it was special." "Oh, spare me. You disappeared for 2 whole days without a call. I bet you didn't even think about your husband once, did you? Keep your wedding rings on while you were with him?" She flinched and started to stutter. "At least you kept your anniversary jewelry. They were gifts, so they're yours," I said, taking off her rings. "But these are mine. And your engagement ring was my grandmother's. Remember when I proposed to you? You won't need these anymore." She started crying and shaking. "Why are you doing this?" she blurted out. "It was just an act. I had a right to it. You don't own me," she said, regaining her confidence. "You need to let go of your pride, Michael. We need to move on. You're right, and I've been trying to do that. Here, this is for you." I handed her an envelope and she looked at it, confused. "What's this?" she asked. "Money. I sold your car, the BMW. I didn't need it anymore." She reacted as if she'd been bitten by a snake. "What did you do with my car?" "It wasn't your car. I bought it for you, but it was in my name and I sold it. I thought giving you the money would be a fair gesture, that's all of it." "But there's only—" She counted the bills. "What, $2,000 here? That car was worth much more. What's going on?" "That's all it was worth, much like our marriage after Friday night. I warned you I'd take everything from you, and you had a lot more to lose than I did." The shock on her face was evident. She looked stunned and began to protest again. "How could you be so heartless? I came back to you, man. I must be lucky," I thought, noticing her bare right hand. "Where's the Princess D ring, Sophia? The one you insisted on having. I offered to get a real replica made, but you preferred the knockoff. You were adamant about that one, so I got it for you to make you happy. Where is it?" Her face turned pale. She started stuttering. She what? 403. "He wanted a keepsake from our weekend," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "So not only did you give away yourself, but you also gave away the ring you claimed to treasure." She blushed and nodded. He checked his watch. 6:03 p.m. Get out, Sophia. We're done." "No, I want to come inside. This is my home." "Not anymore, it isn't." He slammed the door and bolted it shut. Leaning against the sturdy oak, tears welled in his eyes, finally feeling the hurt. She continued ringing the doorbell, pounding on the door, shouting for him to let her in. He dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Police, fire, or medical? I have a restraining order against my soon-to-be ex-wife. She's outside screaming and causing a scene. Send someone, quick. Minutes later, he saw 2 police cars arrive, lights flashing. 4 officers approached his wife while 2 came to his door. He handed them the restraining order and they verified it with the station. He then gave them her copy, requesting discretion. Meanwhile, his wife received the notice. The officers calmed her down and she yelled, "Where am I supposed to go? Go to hell, Sophia." "I couldn't care less," he replied coldly. The officers informed her she had to leave and escorted her and her bags to the curb. She hailed an Uber using her phone, apologizing as the officers waited. She directed the driver to the Peninsula Hotel, hopped in, and drove off. Arriving at Gravely Publishing, Sophia headed to her office on the 10th floor. Her ex-executive assistant, Jessica, awaited her, noting her 30-minute tardiness. Jessica followed her inside. "Is it true?" Jess asked. Sophia snapped to attention, facing her friend and assistant. "What on earth are you talking about?" "Everyone's talking. You and Michael, the gala on Friday night," Jessica pressed. Sitting down, Sophia admitted, "Yes, we were there." "What about the rest of the weekend?"
"I'm not sure what you're getting at," Sophia replied hesitantly.
"You left with that guy, that creep, abandoning Michael." "Oh God, you poor thing," Jess said, slumping into a nearby chair, crying. Sophia was taken aback, staring at her. "Friend. How did you know? I haven't said a word to anyone. How did this get out and who else knows?" "Everyone knows, you idiot. It's all over the company and it's not even 11 yet." Sophia's face drained of color as she sank into her seat. Suddenly, her boss, Gwendolyn Harrelson, barged in. She looked between the 2 women, visibly shocked. "Oh my goodness, it's true," she exclaimed. Sophia was stunned by her boss and friend's reaction. The situation was getting out of control. Defensively, Sophia responded, "I think this is being blown out of proportion." "Oh, really?" Gwen retorted, smirking at Sophia's disbelief. "Do you know who he is? How do you think the whole city, maybe half the Midwest, already knows?" Sophia sat, staring at her hands. "What did Michael tell you?" she whispered. "He said we're finished, claimed he'd ruin me like I'd ruined him," Sophia mumbled. "Who does he think he is? He doesn't run my life. He doesn't own me." "He's your husband, idiot," Gwen shot back. "What did Michael do when you got back on Sunday?" She glanced down at her desk, sniffling. "He sold my car, said he didn't need it anymore since he didn't have a wife to drive it." "Oh my goodness," exclaimed Gwen. At that moment, the door burst open, and Stephanie Jameson, Vice President of Mortgages and Acquisitions for Chemical Bank, stormed in, followed by Sophia's secretary, Angela. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Barron, she just came in," Angela explained. "It's okay, Angela, come on in, Steph," Sophia said with a touch of sarcasm. "What the heck have you done?" Just then, Gwen's phone rang. "Hello? Yes, Hank, I'm with her right now." "No, we haven't heard anything from him yet. I'm just getting the details now." "Yes, dear, I'll let you know as soon as I find out. Goodbye, dear." Gwen looked up and said, "That was my husband, Hank, wondering if you've heard from Michael today." "No, I haven't spoken to him since last night," Sophia replied. With that, she dialed her husband's number. Her phone beeped twice before announcing her service had been cut off. She stared at the Nokia like it was poisonous. "He disconnected my phone," she murmured. Gwen sighed. "Oh, this is bad. Very bad." Just then, Angela entered, saying there was a young woman urgently requesting to see her. She said, "It's urgent and about your marriage." A tense silence filled Sophia's office. "Send her in, Angela." A tall young woman with blonde hair, dressed in a navy blue skirt, ivory blouse, 3-inch heels, and a blazer, entered with a small briefcase. She approached Sophia's desk, surveyed the room, and fixed her gaze on Sophia. "Are you Mrs. Sophia Barron?" "At least for now," Sophia replied nervously. The young woman confronted her. "Listen up, lady. Who do you think you are?" "Yes, I'm Michael Barron's wife." "Do you have something for me?" Sophia asked, dreading what was coming next. "Congratulations, Mrs. Barron. You've been served." The young woman handed her a big envelope, snapped a photo, and left, swiftly. At the door, she turned to the group. "7 years ago, my mother tore our family apart, just like you did. Hope you enjoyed it. Good day." Sophia's head slammed onto the desk as she received the envelope. Gwen hurried to her side, helping her sit up. Sophia struggled to breathe, hyperventilating. Stephanie dialed a number on her phone, connecting to Michael's office. "Chicago American Globe, Mr. Barron's office. How may I assist you?" "I need to speak with Mr. Barron, please. It's Mrs. Stephanie Jameson from Chemical Bank." "May I ask what this is regarding, ma'am?" "It's about his wife." "I'm sorry, ma'am. He's not taking calls from his wife. He said to tell her to—" "Just put him on the phone, damn it," Stephanie snapped. "One moment, please." Soon, Michael's voice came through the speaker. "Well, Stephanie, the whole gang's gathered around the wife. I bet Jessica and Gwendolyn are there too with the cheating queen. What do you need?" "Michael, you're being unreasonable. She's a wreck and you're not helping. What's your plan here?" Ask her what she thought would happen when she took off for her closeness-filled weekend. Tell her to lawyer up and talk to them. I won't talk to her until we sit down with our kids on Saturday. Goodbye, Stephanie. Click. Oh no, Gwen exclaimed. You're in deep trouble. Well, Stephanie retorted, your only hope is to bear it all and beg for mercy. Oh wait, you already did that this weekend, didn't you, dummy? Sophia's head thumped against the desk once more, the sound echoing in the office, but no one rushed to help her. Michael ended the call and dialed his son in New Jersey. Michael Jr. was in a serious relationship, and Michael hoped this situation wouldn't impact it, but they needed to talk. After 3 rings, his son answered. Hey, Dad, what's up? Not great, son. How's Tara? She's good. Dad, what's going on? Is Mom all right? She's physically okay. I need you and your sister here for a family meeting on Saturday. Tara can come too. 2 tickets will be waiting for you at the counter on Friday. Janine will give you the details. Don't ask questions, just be here. It's important. Dad, what's happening? You're scaring me. Son, I haven't talked to you like this in over 10 years, but I need to now. Trust me and do as I say without questions. He hung up, deciding not to influence their opinions about their mother. He'd let them decide for themselves. The conversation with his daughter went similarly, but she seemed more emotional. She agreed to see him on Friday. The rest of his day passed quietly. He consulted his lawyer and updated his private investigator on the progress with Darren Watson. Back at Gravely Publishing, the women gathered together, trying to offer support to their friend Sophia, who was overwhelmed with babbling and tears. What have I done? What have I done? Sophia was inconsolable, unable to grasp reality. Eventually, Gwen took charge. We need to pull ourselves together and level the playing field. She called a friend on her cell phone. Hey, Carolyn, it's Gwendolyn Harrelson. Can you represent a friend of mine in a divorce? Her name is Sophia Barron. Yes, her husband is Michael Barron. Wait, what? Oh, I see, thanks a lot. What was that about? She's already seen as toxic. That was Carolyn Herrera. She's tough and hates bad husbands almost as much as cheating spouses. When she heard Sophia's name, she knew the situation. She said if she took the case, her husband would divorce her. They're devout Catholics with 5 kids, and they know Michael and Sophia. Plus, she's aware of the jerk involved. Stephanie chimed in. Let me give it a shot. She dialed a number on her cell phone. Hey, this is Stephanie Jameson. Can I speak to Brett Walker? Yeah, it's about a divorce. Hi, Brett. I need to discuss a divorce matter with you. Oh, you've already heard? Well, thanks anyway. She hung up and sighed. You're not getting any breaks, honey. I'm running out of options here. He heard about what happened and basically said you brought this on yourself. He also mentioned he wouldn't challenge Steve Dawson on this for anything. Sophia's head dropped to her desk again, this time landing on her arms. So I reached out to some pals who could stir up trouble discreetly. Nothing too serious, I didn't want them getting caught. Sugar in the gas tank, paint balloons on his fancy car. After that, they went to work on the car with an air grinder and a rotozip tool, messing up the hood, sides, roof, and rear deck. Then they flattened the tires and slashed the sidewalls. Those pricey Michelins were ruined. This retaliation was going to keep happening for a while, and I wasn't worried about the cost. She had a hard time finding a lawyer, but eventually she found a feminist lawyer willing to take her case. So it all boiled down to the family meeting. Friday was chilly in Chicago, almost as cold as it was at home. The kids flew in from both coasts. My son brought along his soon-to-be fiancé. I hoped he was making the right choice. This meeting was going to be emotional. Their mom was still staying at the hotel, and they didn't understand why. I told them they'd have to talk to her the next day. They asked where she was. She's staying at the Peninsula Hotel. If you want to see or talk to her, try there. I've tried, Dad. Her cell phone isn't working anymore. Why would that be? It's disconnected. Call her workplace or leave a message at the front desk. I wonder why she hasn't called you yet. Interesting. My daughter looked at my son, his fiancé, and asked, what's going on? Your mom has a problem. I can't talk about it. Talk to her, please. You'll understand if she talks to you. They tried to reach her but couldn't. Through her secretary, she said she'd talk to them Saturday morning at 10 a.m. I took the kids out to dinner, and we had a nice, albeit slightly awkward time. Saturday morning was clear and cold, typical for Chicago at this time of year. At 10, the kids had coffee waiting for their mom to show up. She arrived accompanied by the Honorable Kathleen O'Hara. Seriously, Sophia? Bringing your lawyer here in front of the kids? My client didn't want any attacks on her character in front of her children. Your choice. I led them into the living room. The kids rushed to their mom, eager to know what was happening. No questions for my client, said Miss O'Hara. What? Who is this, Mom? I'm Miss Sophia D.A.'s attorney. Your dad is filing for divorce against her. Game over. I just sat there, smiling, saying nothing. Steve had advised me to either speak the truth or stay silent if this happened. Looking back, it was wise counsel. My son spoke up first. "What's going on, Mom? Please direct all questions to me." "What's happening, Mom?" Ashley asked. "Talk to me, miss. I'm your mom's spokesperson." "Mom, is this true?" "Miss Barron, don't make me remind you again," Miss O'Hara interrupted. That's when Tara intervened. "Shut up." Needless to say, Miss O'Hara was taken aback. "And who are you?" "I'm Miss Tara Longoria. I'm Mr. Michael Barron Jr.'s fiancé. That makes me family, more than I can say for you." Now this was getting interesting. Michael Jr.'s mom didn't know about this. Actually, I hadn't realized how serious it was until I saw the diamond on her left hand. I grinned, stood up, and hugged my new soon-to-be daughter-in-law. Then I turned to my smiling son, hugged him, and shook his hand. "Congrats, son," I said. He grinned back, saying, "Watch out, old man, you know she's taken." All the while, his mom seemed to be in shock. "Oh, my baby," Sophia exclaimed. "Sorry, Mom. You need to speak through your mouthpiece," her child reminded her. She choked up. Miss O'Hara announced, "I think we are done here," and got up to leave. That was the last straw for me. "Sit down, witch. This is a family meeting. You knew that and still brought a lawyer. You can either stay quiet or get out. Her kids and I need to talk to Sophia, got it?" The room fell silent. Miss O'Hara reluctantly sat back down, looking embarrassed. "Now, Sophia, aside from today, I haven't said anything to our kids yet. You're up first. Don't mess it up." I glared at the lawyer. When she started to speak, she quickly shut her mouth. Flustered, she finally managed to say, "Your father wants a divorce." Michael gave me a deadly look. "Why, Mother?" he asked. She averted her gaze and whispered, "I don't know." Mel, Ashley, and Tara gave me piercing looks. I was in trouble, but still held some cards. "Really, Sophia? Is that how you're handling this?" She began to cry. "My turn," I said. She sobbed again. "Fine. Your mother and I attended the children's gala last Friday. She mingled with a man who offered her a weekend of pleasure, promising her experiences she'd never forget. He did that to her on the ballroom balcony. Women who had been in her position before warned me about his intentions. Then they left together, and she told me she was going home with him for the weekend. I feel terrible for not intervening. She's an adult and can make her own choices, but I regret not standing up to him. I could have caused a scene, but I didn't. I feel ashamed and embarrassed. Your mother, however, went ahead with what she wanted, just as predicted. I didn't hear from her until Sunday afternoon around 4:45 when she texted me she was on her way home. She got home around 5:25, dropped off by him. I was getting angry. She walked up like nothing happened. Her keys didn't work because I changed the locks. I didn't want to risk her bringing the guy into our home. "You sold my car," she cried. "I already told you it was my car. I bought it, and it was in my name. I gave you the money for it. I didn't give it away like you did with your body." She started falling apart, mascara and eyeliner running, tears streaming down her face. But you know what hurt the most? She wore her diamond necklace, the one I gave her for our 24th anniversary, and her Christmas soiree earrings to the party. When she came home, she still had them, along with her wedding and engagement rings. I took those back because we're no longer married, and the engagement ring was my grandmother's. But you know what she didn't have anymore? The one piece of jewelry she cherished the most. What was her favorite? The one she loved, even though it was just a cheap copy. The one I promised to replace with a better version, the ring she always wore. My kids knew immediately. "Lady Di's ring," they said. Sophia collapsed, crying. "Yeah, Lady Di's ring. She lost that, and you know why? Please, Michael, stop. Please," she begged. He wanted a keepsake. She gave it away, just like she gave herself away. My children hugged each other, shocked. Sophia was a wreck. "Please stop. I'll sign everything. Just stop." So I spent the weekend and the whole week sorting things out and crying. I cried a lot. That's why I have nothing left now. Then Ashley said, "Daddy, can't you forgive her for one mistake?" "Yeah, Dad, it was just one time. Mom deserves better from you. Move on." I missed the first chance, couldn't handle the tough situation. Michael's response was another setback. I was behind now, feeling stunned. I didn't see this coming. Was I the only one hurting so much? Was it all my fault? Were my kids suddenly clueless? "Are you even listening to what we're talking about? Do you know what she did? Let's see, tell me, Sophia, did you have an inappropriate conversation with a man not your husband last Friday night?" "I chatted with a handsome guy," she admitted. One chance passed, I thought. Answer the question. Well, I guess I might have. Another chance gone. I was doing okay, I told myself. She couldn't give a straight answer. "And did he tell you to tell your husband you were going home with him to be intimate?" "Yes, but I'm a grown woman and a close call, still hanging in there." "I see, so did you sleep with him?" "Because I wasn't there, I don't know," she stammered. So tell us what you did all weekend. Did you play games, talk poetry, write letters to your kids? Did you even bother to call your husband? You're just a 4003, she threw in insultingly. I avoided it. I wanted it, so I did it, she confessed. Know this, I'll have you questioned under oath about that weekend. The world will know if they don't already. And the woman who served you papers? She's actually a lawyer. She volunteered because her family faced the same issue. That's why she became an attorney. Sophia realized she was in trouble. She broke down, all her confidence gone, facing her soon-to-be ex-husband and her 3 kids. She said, I'll sign everything and give it to Peter today. O'Hara intervened. I don't think this is in your best interest. You're fired, Kathleen. Send your invoice to my office and I'll arrange for payment. Right on target. I hit a home run straight into the center field seats at Kamsky Park. Sophia headed for the door and glanced back at me. Goodbye, Michael. Kids, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we can meet up. She exited and the door shut behind her. Miss O'Hara remained in the living room. Well, she said to me, I hope you're content. She's upset. Get out of my house, you witch, I yelled. The attorney huffed, turned, and departed. That's when it began. Dad, how could you be so mean to Mom, treating her like that? My daughter said. What's the matter with you, Dad? Seriously, are you divorcing Mom over this? I'm glad I sent both of them to college, I thought to myself. Do you think I should just put up with this? Is this what you both expect from your marriages? I turned to face Tara. If that's the case, get out of there as fast as you can, Tara. She gasped and stared at me. I would never do something like that, Dad. It's just wrong from every angle. Surely, Dad, you're not really going through with this? Mike, it's settled. And if you can't support me on this, don't invite me to any events in the future. Any events? I looked directly into his eyes and held his gaze. He's got my temper and I could see him getting riled up. Ashley, however, was in a complaining mood. Dad, why were you so mean? Mom was in such a bad state when she left. She's really hurting. You should forgive her and take her back. I was stunned. My kids were supporting their mom despite her unfaithfulness. Finally, Tara spoke up. Dad, this might upset Mike, but you're right. Mom didn't even admit what she did wrong or say sorry. Not that it would change anything, but showing remorse would have been the decent thing to do at least. Things got tense after that. About 2 hours later, they phoned their mom and arranged to visit her. I gave Mike a spare key and reminded him to drive safely. He looked at me and asked, Do you want to come along? Are you serious? I shouted. Mike stared at me, then said he couldn't understand me. I intensified my efforts against the jerk, and my allies seemed to be having a blast while getting the job done. One of their tactics was to switch his license plate and anonymously report his car as stolen to the police. I was impressed by how easily they accessed his vehicles, even though he kept both his Ferrari and Cadillac in a garage. They also tailed him on the Dan Ryan Expressway using a clever device that could manipulate the car's computer. By slowing down traffic and trapping him in the middle lane when he tried to exit, they forced the Ferrari to swerve and hit the barrier. It caused significant damage and landed him in the hospital for 10 days. Meanwhile, his insurance premiums skyrocketed, and he lost coverage from his original provider. The guy was having the worst luck imaginable, and whenever the cops got involved, they weren't exactly eager to solve the case. They seemed aware of his reputation and turned a blind eye to his troubles. Most of them probably suspected some angry husband was seeking revenge. Thank goodness for the police. That evening, Steve called to inform me that she had personally delivered the legal documents. He had a favorable judge lined up. His son had been a victim of the jerk 3 years ago, and he assured us he would expedite both the divorce and the alienation of affection lawsuit. As for the adultery charge, it was uncertain if we could make much headway, but it was worth a shot. The kids grew distant from me, especially after the initial confrontation, and only Tara expressed support for my stance. After about a week, they returned to school and the divorce proceedings continued. When the final decree was issued, I felt liberated, just in time for the Cancer Society ball. I knew he'd be there, and I was itching to get even. At a coffee shop, one of my allies pitched me an idea that was so brilliant, I had to witness it myself. I called Lana to see if she planned to attend. She mentioned she had an invite but hadn't thought about going. I suggested it would be worth her while, especially if she wanted to witness some entertainment, which I planned to provide. We arrived and mingled, and I noticed Sophia there with her friends, Gwendolyn and Stephanie. She was trying to talk to the jerk, but he was focused on a petite blonde in a green dress. The jerk's 2 buddies were keeping her husband occupied while he made his move on her. He led her to a private room and shut the door. I approached the husband and offered to help him if he trusted me and followed my lead. He looked panicked, and Lana started explaining the situation to him. I warned him that if he caused a scene, he'd likely get beaten up, but if he cooperated, they'd still leave together, just a bit embarrassed. He glanced at the goons and seemed to give in. I promised to connect him with people who could assist him and suggested he could embarrass his wife enough to get an apology. Reluctantly, he agreed. As they emerged from the side room with the wife leading, we followed closely behind. They stopped to grab their coats while the goons arranged for the Cadillac to be brought around. We exited just as they were opening the back doors, and they got in, with him grabbing her and kissing her. After they closed the door, the second goon got in the front passenger seat. The husband was on edge, but I urged him to wait. Now, my friend's plan involved two of his associates who worked at an auto detail shop. They had given the jerk's office a discount coupon for interior cleaning and a free car wash. While they cleaned the car, they planted 3 smoke bombs that smelled like skunk under the seats with electronic detonators. The car's brake lights blinked, and it slowly started moving. After about 10 feet, it suddenly stopped, hitting a taxi with its front right side. The doors swung open, and 4 people stumbled out, coughing and retching, with smoke billowing around them. The blonde's dress slipped, and her panties ended up on the pavement outside the car. The woman's husband rushed to her side, though he wobbled a bit from the smell and smoke. I smirked as the jerk struggled to stand, his injured leg making him hobble. Just then, the police arrived. As the jerk moved towards his former lover, the husband intervened, landing a punch to his stomach and a kick to his groin. Down he went. The husband quickly led his wife away, even with the skunk smell clinging to her, scolding her as they left. Turning to Lana, I said, "That's one for the good guys." I had given the husband my business card with my cell number and told him to call me the next day. I dialed a speed dial number on my cell. "Hello," the voice answered. "Great job," I said. "Thanks," he replied, and the call ended. I gave the husband my card and told him to reach out if he needed to talk. Lana and I headed to her townhome, where things quickly heated up. We ended up in her bedroom, exploring different kinds of intimacy. While I hadn't been celibate since my divorce, this was a new level of connection for me. Lana and I reached the bed, where she pushed me down and went to work on me. She took me deep, leaving marks as she nibbled, then climaxed intensely. It was all about her using me to purge her guilt. She cried out her late husband's name as she continued. It was overwhelming. As she sobbed, I lay there stunned, trying to process it all. Lawrence, her late husband, was clearly on her mind. She collapsed crying and then composed herself, apologizing for her outburst. I reassured her, understanding her pain. We talked, acknowledging the emotional intensity of the moment. I wasn't sure what I felt for her, but there was a connection. After some rest, I showered, dressed, and kissed her before leaving. She asked if I thought she'd be okay, and I assured her I'd call. In the following months, Lana and I grew closer. While family matters progressed, my son got married, and, despite the past, they invited his mother, expecting that I'd handle it. I assured him I would, but I didn't show up. Tara's folks were clueless about the situation, and they weren't happy with me. Tara's wife filled them in, which shocked her mom and ticked off her dad. Their Italian family promptly cut ties with my ex-wife, with Tara's grandma even spitting in Sophia's face. Things escalated when one of Sophia's friends hit on her, leading to a scene. She broke down and left the reception. I sent Tara a nice note and a check, and I sent her parents a letter explaining why I couldn't be around Sophia. I also emailed my son a blunt message. The wedding had taken place in Kenilworth, New Jersey. A year later, my son and daughter-in-law welcomed a baby boy named Michael Giovanni Barron, honoring his dad and both grandpas. Tara invited me to the christening, which thrilled me. I traveled to Newark, New Jersey, rented a hotel, and attended the ceremony at St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church in Palisades Park, New Jersey. Meeting my namesake was a joyous moment. But then I spotted Sophia entering with someone, and I almost lost it. She came over, and I turned to my son, asking if she was there. Tara pleaded with me to stay calm, just this once. "Sorry, honey," I said, handing her an envelope, and then I left. Back at the hotel, I checked out, headed to the airport, caught the next flight to Chicago, and returned home. I nearly had to change my phone number afterward. Childish, maybe, but it is what it is. Time passed, and Michael landed a job in Chicago with the Justice Department. When I called to congratulate him and Tara and ask about my grandson, I heard her voice in the background. "Who's calling?" I heard from the background. I ended the call and powered off my phone. After that, I kept to myself mostly. The only person I really talked to was Lana, who had become both a close friend and a bedmate. My campaign against Darren Woodson seemed to still be working. Woodson was trying to figure out who was targeting him, but he couldn't. Even my son and daughter-in-law knew about it. It was still small stuff, but it was becoming legendary. Time went by. About 3 months later, Tara called me at work. "Dad, next Saturday is little Michael's 3rd birthday. We're throwing a party and want you there." "I'd like to, sweetheart, but you know how I feel. I'm not good company, and I don't want to spoil it for..." "Mom isn't invited." I told Michael, your son, that she's not welcome that day. I'll cut him off if he invites her or asks her to come. I really admire this girl. My son doesn't deserve her. I'd be honored to come. I got the details and cleared my schedule for the day. I called FAO Schwartz and ordered a Tonka dump truck, just like the one I had as a kid. I had it wrapped and sent to my office. Michael had one for Christmas one year, and it was a hit. No fancy electronics, just metal and rubber tires. They were always popular, especially with grandpas. I arrived at 10 a.m. on Saturday. We had a great time, lunch, cake, coffee, and then presents. I chatted with Tara's parents, and they said they could see why their daughter thought highly of me. Tara's dad loved the dump truck. Reminds me of the one I had when I was a kid. Good choice, Mike. I liked him. Little Mike played with the truck all over the backyard until he got tired. His mom and grandma put him down for a nap. Even my son was cordial. He brought me a beer and suggested I relax in the backyard. I took his advice and found a chair on the lawn. Life felt good. As I took a sip of Bud, a shadow fell over me, and I glanced up to see my ex-wife with a glass of what looked like white wine. Hello, Michael. Mind if I join you? I glared at her but stayed silent. She set her big shoulder bag down and sat, crossing her ankles, a pose she used to try to charm me. Not this time. My glare made her shiver. You're not making this easy, are you? Anyway, Michael mentioned you'd be here, and his wife made it clear I wasn't welcome. It might not sit well with him, but he thought it was worth a shot to patch things up between us. Michael thinks we deserve another shot. I want us to be together again, to wake up in each other's arms, grow old together. I've been lonely these past years. What do you say? Can we try again? I looked her over. She'd aged a lot, gained some weight, developed a nervous tic. She never apologized, just launched into her speech. I wondered where the woman I married had gone. I sighed, finished my beer, and got up. Well, she asked, what's your answer? Not just no, but hell no, Sophia. I've been through hell these past 3.5 years because of you. Maybe harsh, but it felt good to say. I walked away. I went up to the patio, then through the sliding glass doors into the kitchen, where I ran into my son, who grinned at me. So, how'd it go, Dad? Not too bad, huh? A shot rang out, and screams filled the air as guests rushed outside. I grabbed my son's arm. Your mother might be hurt. Go check on her. He bolted and hurried outside. I grabbed a water bottle, went to the living room, and sat alone on the couch. The police arrived, taking statements. A .44 caliber can cause a lot of damage. I answered their questions, explaining I hadn't spoken to my ex-wife in years. I spoke with my daughter-in-law, comforting her through tears. Then I left for home. Lana called, having heard the news. I assured her I was handling it. Should I come over? She asked. No, I'll manage, but thanks for offering. On Monday, I called in Stu Phillips, our top crime photographer in Chicago. Stu had won many local and national awards for his photography. Stu, I need a favor. Sure, boss. What's up? My ex-wife took her own life at my grandson's birthday party on Saturday. Most folks have heard about it. Boss, we're sorry, even though you two weren't close. Thanks, I appreciate it. Do you have connections with the forensics team? Can you get me photos of her skull, her head, color? 10x12 would be ideal. Stu gave me a curious look, thinking it over. It's a bit unusual, but I can make it happen. I know some folks who owe me a favor. Might be a little weird, though. Thanks, Stu. I owe you one. I'll get it done in a few days, boss. A plan started forming in my head, adding to my revenge campaign. The wake lasted 3 days at a fancy funeral home on the west side. Her casket remained closed due to her appearance. She had many friends, with hundreds attending. I wasn't there. Word had it that my absence didn't go unnoticed. The day of her funeral was gray and rainy. I felt cold and damp. The procession included 4 flower cars, 3 limos, and the hearse, with about 60 cars following. Again, I wasn't among them. I stood at the cemetery, watching from a distance in the misty rain. I observed as the coffin was carried to the grave. Despite the weather, a large crowd gathered, and the priest said kind words. It made me wonder who he was talking about. I was surprised he even showed up, considering the circumstances of her death. My son was scanning the area, probably searching for me. After the service ended, people began to depart. Soon, only immediate family and close friends remained. As the crowd thinned, it eventually dwindled down to just my kids. They headed to the limos, with my son lingering at the back door of the Cadillac, scanning the surroundings. Eventually, he gave up and got in. The car slowly made its way out of the cemetery and disappeared into the mist. I left the trees just as the groundskeepers were preparing to close the grave. Approaching her coffin, I briefly contemplated an act of defiance. However, all the anger and hatred had dissipated somehow. I didn't know how, but it had all faded away. Looking down at the woman I once loved, I sighed and bid her farewell. I forgive you. Even if you don't acknowledge your wrongs, I forgive you. I used to love you, but not anymore. Arriving at work the following day, I found a large envelope on my desk. I hesitated before opening it, knowing what it contained. Eventually, I gathered the courage and took out the photo. It wasn't pleasant, but it was Sophia. The Children's Society benefit was approaching, marking the 4th anniversary of this whole ordeal. I called Lana and invited her to accompany me. She agreed enthusiastically, and we arranged for me to pick her up around 8 p.m. Summoning the Society editor to my office, I also called in our investigative reporter and photographer. I wanted to convene a meeting to strategize and plan our next steps. They gathered, and I explained my plan. Next weekend, I want to publish that expose on Darren Woodson. There were murmurs of approval, only verified, factual, legally affirmed accounts supported by depositions and sworn statements, no guesswork. We should have enough evidence to bring him down. I want photographers at the event to capture everything. Then we'll interview the organizers to tally up the proceeds. Can we make this happen? I don't foresee any issues, boss. We'll be ready to publish by midnight on Friday with space for any new photos. Thank you, everyone, I said. A week later, I escorted Lana Tooley to the children's charity event. After checking our coats, we mingled with friends. There he was, moving through the crowd like a predator, searching for his next target. He spotted a pretty brunette with long hair, whose husband had gone to the bar for drinks. Her champagne glass was nearly empty. She smiled as Woodson approached her and whispered in her ear. Blushing slightly, she leaned in closer to him. He brushed her arm and then her shoulder. She shivered and moved closer to him. I noticed one of his henchmen positioning himself near the balcony doors, while the other began to approach the husband. Sensing trouble, the husband turned and confronted Woodson, who intensified his advances. Turning to Lana, I said, "Now." She stepped away from me and moved closer to the second henchman, waiting. Woodson whispered in her ear, took her arm, and led her towards the balcony. She grinned, seemingly enjoying herself. I stepped in between them and spoke up. "Excuse me, you don't know me, but this guy made similar advances to my wife about 4.5 years ago. She gave in and went off with him for the weekend. It wrecked our marriage and led to this," I said, showing her a photo of my wife's battered face. "This is my wife. She took her own life last week." I placed the picture in her hand. She went pale, trembling, and dropped her glass, which shattered, causing a commotion in the crowd. "This is your chance to avoid the same mistake she made." I discreetly signaled to the nearby photographers and noticed one of Woodson's henchmen moving towards me. The shocked woman glanced at the photo, then turned to Woodson. "You jerk!" she shouted, slapping him across the face, her nails digging into his skin. Just then his bodyguard approached, but Lana stepped in. "Excuse me," Lana said calmly. I turned to leave, brushing past with my right shoulder. "It's you," he snarled, reaching for my shoulder. "Let go of me," I growled, spinning away from him to my left, then pivoting to punch him square in the nose with my right fist. His nose crumpled, and his jaw cracked. Blood gushed, and he collapsed like a sack of bricks. His henchmen stood frozen while cameras clicked around them. Lana took my arm as the brunette's husband approached her. "Please take me home now," she said, her voice trembling. We stepped onto the dance floor, and the crowd parted as we moved to the center. Facing the crowd, I pointed at Woodson. "I should be ashamed of what that guy got away with," I exclaimed. "You should all be ashamed for supporting him just by donating to charity. The charity, along with Chicago and society, should be accountable for his actions. On Saturday and Sunday, there will be a newspaper article with the facts and the brave statements of his victims. Read it and take it to heart." Lana pulled me away before I lost my cool, and we made our way through the crowd. Back home, she iced my sore fist. Then we had a passionate night together. The consequences were swift and harsh. While his actions weren't illegal, public opinion was ruthless. He became an outcast, and charities rejected his donations. Contributions to the Children's Gala plummeted by 65%. Several organizations returned his money, removed him from boards, or censured him. Even the NAACP distanced themselves. As a stockbroker, his negative reputation cost him his license and job. He attempted to sue me and have me arrested. But the husband of the woman he tried to seduce, who was an ADA in Cook County, launched his own investigation, rendering the lawsuit futile. 2 weeks after he was fired, he was found in an alley down by the old stockyards, his Johnson removed and placed in his mouth. Too bad. Lana and I became a couple, though marriage isn't certain. Reconnecting with my kids and bonding with her children has been challenging but rewarding. We're navigating through the difficulties as best we can.